welcome back to the Eating Podcast. Y'all, it has been a pretty busy day for me. I had to get out and, do some things. I actually went to hot yoga, which is one of my favorite things that I love doing. And so I went out and did what I needed to do. And I said, then after that, I would record the podcast. So that's why it's coming to y'all a little bit late. This weekend was crazy busy. A lot of things were going on, but I didn't forget about y'all. So glad you are here to tune in this week. I hope you all are doing well. I know there's a lot going on in this country. Obviously, there are a lot of things going on around the world as well. I feel, many people, we've been saying for a while, we feel like the world is on fire. Well, I mean, it is basically in flames at this point because a lot's going on. And this week, I was just thinking about the podcast episode and just like how we as a society could come together if it's possible to come together, given this current administration and their actual stance on uniting this country. And so, from what it seems, unity is the last thing that this actual administration wants for the United States of America. And it's more of a, our side is winning, your side's losing, we're on top, you're on bottom type of approach. And so it's just concerning to me, like how we move forward as a country. I was reading an article from the New York Times recently, or today rather, and thought this was a great article to, share with y'all. And I'll, as I always do, I'll share it in the show notes. So the title of this article is In an Era of Deep Polarization, Unity is Not Trump's Mission. And, as I had mentioned before, it's evident that this is how this administration wants to operate. And it was timely that I found this article. It's written by Peter Baker at the New York Times. Um, and before I go into the article, I just, I always want folks to know that my stance in terms of the political views of this country are not what most people will probably think, right? I am a registered Democrat, just because it is what it is. But in terms of really like being on these polarizing sides of, am I hardcore MAGA? Am I, a hardcore, blue no matter who mentality? That is not me at all. Um, I feel like at this point in time, as we learn and we evolve and we grow, for me, the political stage, and that's literally what it is. And I come from a background of theater. The government for the past few years, and this is pre Trump's second term as well, it has literally been just that, a stage to me, where people are acting out different scenarios and scenes and situations. And then we, as the audience, kind of follow suit and really don't, not that we don't question, but we're just kind of like falling in line and gravitating towards these energetic uh, cosplay situations that are happening that are affecting actually our everyday lives. So I just wanted to say that because I feel like in so many ways, people have this idea of, oh, you must be a Democrat, hardcore Democrat, or you must be a MAGA or a hardcore Republican or whatever. The labeling for me is exhausting by itself. Just to keep it completely 100, I think it's damaging in a way. I think we have gone so far on whatever spectrum that you are in terms of your political beliefs, like in terms of being, like I said, polarized in this country, that it seems so hard to actually come together as a people in this nation and fight against this system. Because at the end of the day, it's not even really uh, the blue versus red or MAGA and whatever the ultra uh extreme Democrats call themselves. I think is it blue MAGA? I could be wrong, but when you think about these two extreme entities within the government, I mean the political stance of this country, and people that are in on both sides of this camp, and you're just wondering, like, how is it possible? How is it possible for us to come together? And then on top of that, you have a leader who is, driving the narrative of division, and you just wonder, will this ever be a thing? And so, like I said, this article, I'll give you the article's title again, just so if you forgot. In the midst of me rambling, the title is "In an Era of Deep Polarization, Unity is Not Trump's Mission." And so at the bottom of that, the title, it says President Trump does not subscribe to the traditional notion of being president for all Americans. So the article starts off and it says the first few minutes of President Trump's Oval Office address after the assassination of Charlie Kirk last week followed the conventional presidential playbook. He praised the victim and asked God to watch over his family and talked mournfully of a dark moment for America. Then he tossed the playbook aside, angrily blaming the murder on the American left and vowing revenge. That was stark even for some viewers who might normally be sympathetic. When Mr. Trump appeared later on Fox News, a host noted that there were radicals on the right, just as there were radicals on the left, and asked, "How do we come together?" The president rejected the premise. Radicals on the right were justified by anger over a crime, he said. The radicals on the left are the problem, he added, and they're vicious and they're horrible. Mr. Trump has long made clear that coming together is not the mission of his presidency. In an era of deep polarization in American society, he rarely talks about healing. While other presidents have typically tried to lower the temperature in moments of a national crisis, Mr. Trump turns up the flames. He does not subscribe to traditional notion of being president for all the people. He acts as president of Red America and the people who agree with him, while those who do not are portrayed as enemies and traitors deserving payback. The left has declared war on America, Steve K. Bannon, Mr. Trump's former chief strategist and a leading voice in MAGA movement, said in a text message on Saturday. Trump is a wartime president now focused on eradicating domestic terrorists like Antifa, Mr. Bannon added, referring to the anti-fascist movement. The notion that of Trump as a wartime president in a war against some of his own people speaks to just how different his presidency is. Campaigning last year to reclaim power 4 years after his reelection defeat, Mr. Trump dispensed with his usual bromades about national unity and instead declared that the biggest threat to the United States was the enemy from within. And I wanted to stop there because one, that's just a lot of information, but two, as I'm thinking about this and like reading this, he's declaring that the biggest threat to the United States is the enemy from within. And when we think about, phrases like that, I instantly, and this is just from my point of view, when I think about the enemy from within, I'm thinking about MAGA. I'm thinking about those extremist folks who are ready to have their guns, locked and loaded for whatever they feel is either a threat or, some type of danger, which in many ways, and this, like I said, this is my opinion. I don't know that for the majority of MAGA folks that they are really in that much danger. I could be wrong, but I don't see that being um, an issue for them within themselves, possibly. And so when I think of the enemy from within, I'm thinking of maybe the enemy being just that MAGA, but he's creating this narrative that it's not. uh, his camp. It is other people, it's different marginalized people that are actually in this country. And so because of that, we have to get rid of them. And it's just wild to me that folks are so brainwashed. I hate to keep saying that word, but it is in many ways brainwashed and like bamboozled by this rhetoric. Um, because I mean, for most people, and I'm from Indiana, from Southern Indiana, which is a whole different ball game, because it's basically the South. And growing up there and talking to folks that are very conservative. I mean, at the time, they didn't have the MAGA title. At one point when I was living there, and then at one point, then right before I left Indiana, that whole MAGA movement started really revving up. But all that to say, folks have been thinking and feeling like this for a long time. I grew up with folks like this that were just very extremist in this way. And Trump just gave them a voice to do what they've always wanted to do on a larger scale. And they're having that opportunity in their moment now, in the past few years, for that matter. Um, and so it's just wild to me that the on their end they see the enemy not being them and someone else, but the violence for the most part is coming from that camp and those people that have that type of ideology. So it's just something to think about. The article goes on to say he vowed a retribution against those who, in his view, have betrayed him or the country, and he has spent the first 8 months of his second term exacting it against Democrats, wayward Republicans, estranged allies, law firms, universities, news outlets, and anyone else he considers disloyal or excessively liberal. He sees a country riven into two ideological and political camps, one that supports him and one that does not. He governs accordingly. In recent days, he has vowed to order troops into cities run by Democrats while sending money in the form of disaster relief to states run by Republicans. This viewpoint reflects Mr. Trump's own history and personality, born out of an us against them, winners and losers approach to the life that carried him through decades in business, reality television, and eventually politics. He is not comfortable as a comforter. He prefers a fight. He needs an enemy. And Democrats fractured and leaderless, he is positioning himself as the scourge of an American left, uh, that has contends grown radical beyond recognition. This has been consistent from the beginning. Jeff Sheshel, a former speechwriter for President Bill Clinton, and said of Mr. Trump's escalatory reaction to the assassination of Mr. Kirk. It's not a tactic. It's not a stratagem. It's who he is and who he sees the world in this Machiavellian way. The left, the radical left, as he always wants to call it, is evil. And this is another opportunity to establish that no matter what the facts are. It is wild to me that this is how America has ended up at this point in time, where we are just so divided and we're being led by someone who operates on a developmental level of basically a toddler or some preschool age child, where it's like, if you don't like me, that's it. I'm done. I'm gonna throw a tantrum and I'm going to find my people that are going to say yes to me, right? Um, it's concerning that we have gotten to this point, but here we are. I mean, it's been a long time coming. It's been a long time coming. And if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, you know that a lot of the things that I talk about delve into the issues that this country still has not, reckoned with which is the white supremacy, the patriarchal ideologies of this country. Um, and because of those things, we are in the situation that we're in. And many people at this point in time are, so deep in it. I mean, it's just so woven into the American structures and ways and being that you don't even sometimes you don't even realize that that is what's happening to you and to those around you, that you are being bamboozled into thinking that this is the way to actually operate. And I'm not saying that you have to completely agree with all the democratic beliefs and how Democrats operate. I don't actually agree with a lot of things that are happening within the government in so many ways. And not just because, it's the Trump administration. I was feeling this when Biden was in office. Um, so this is not, oh, when Biden was in office, things were so much better. No, the actual government in this country, in my opinion, is very corrupt. And it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, it doesn't matter if it's a Republican. The structure of this government is built on corruption. And no matter how you want to view it, that it is just that. And so, regardless if it was Trump, Obama, Biden, Bush, whoever, Reagan, this system is beyond corrupt. And in order for this divisive way of how we are being governed and how we actually operate and treat each other, in order for that to actually be eradicated, we have to completely have a new system and a new way of being and living and doing stuff. Because if we continue on in this way, we will be just this, what this article is saying to us here, as well as what we're experiencing living here in America. We will continue to be divided, and this country will continue to crumble and be something of yesteryear as opposed to something that's forward thinking, innovative, and us actually moving forward into um, what most countries or other countries rather are doing. We're so far behind. We're so in, I mean, we've regressed in ways that are embarrassing. When you look at other countries and how innovative and how forward thinking they are, and all the different technology based um, things that they have going on, it's just like, what in the world is happening in America? And what's happening here is people don't want to let go of the past that they feel is serving them. And really, at the end of the day, it's not serving them at all. It's just a hierarchy of skin color that is saving you. But everything else, not so much. I mean, like that's literally where we have been for the past, I don't even know how many years. It's been years. For as long as I've been on this earth, that's all I've ever known is being some issue as it relates to race, as it relates to oppression, and keeping folks in marginalized groups down, as opposed to just everyone working together and creating a strong economy and for everyone to thrive and live well. There's always been some type of issue where that was never on the table because of the mentality of scarcity and oh, this person's going to take away from me, and if this person, this Mexican person or this immigrant or whoever comes in, they're going to take away my job and I won't be able to have this and this, and that has been going on for as long as I can remember. Meanwhile, like I said, other countries, they are on the ball. They are making things work for their countries and their people. And it's just wild to me that we're still fighting over stuff that has been on the table for years on end. And it's like, where is the end game in all this? Where is the end game? Like, are other countries completely perfect? No, they are not perfect. But they realize that in order for them to be on um to be in the actual game of being a country that has some type of like stance in this world, you've got to come together and figure out ways to do just that, to be a part of that actual stance. And I think America, we have been so conditioned to think that we have been on top for so long and we're the best and we've done this and no one can beat us. When you're constantly in that mentality and you're not looking around to see what else is happening outside of your little bubble, you're going to lose because you have no idea what else is going on in the world because you feel like you have everything you need right here. Nothing else could be better. And it's like, actually, there's so much better. Um, and like I said, not no, there's no country that's completely perfect, but in terms of us actually being innovative and moving through um, this world in a way that's forward thinking, we've lost the plot completely. Completely. The article goes on and it talks about more things as it relates to this. Um, but it talks more about Charlie Kirk's situation and how that actual his the assassination of Charlie Kirk has really caused more of a divide and more inflammatory um actions in the MAGA movement. But then it also goes on and it says that so in the recent days, we have learned just how many Americans in position of authority, child services, law clerks, hospital nurses, teachers, government workers, and even DOD employees have been deeply and violently radicalized. And this is from um, Miller. Um, He's actually Stephen Miller, this is what he said, that folks have been radicalized, suggesting that their responses to Kirk's killing were unacceptable. The consequences of a vast organized ecosystem and indoctrination. This is what he's saying about folks who have now started, really seeing that this polarization of just being hardcore MAGA is not it. And on the other side as well. So it's like if you're not on their side, everything is just you're terrible, and you're going against quote unquote the country. Mr. Trump is certainly right that that his opponents have called him a fascist and a Nazi, but his outrage at incendiary rhetoric is situational. In the same Fox News interview last week, in which he complained about excesses by the left, he referred to Zohran Mamdani, the Democratic Socialist and frontrunner mayor for New York, a communist. Even more than in his first term, Mr. Trump lately has referred to political rivals and journalists as evil. Even in his anger at being called a fascist, depends on who says it and whether they take it back. His own vice president, J.D. Vance, once called him America's Hitler, a remark that he later disavowed and managed to overcome to win his way onto Trump's ticket. Likewise, the president's concern for security against political violence has depended on who was threatened, rather. He pardoned some 1,500 supporters who stormed the Capitol on January 6th of 2021, including those who assaulted police officers and called for the execution of his own Vice President Mike Pence. At one point, he declined to rule out pardoning the police convicted of a plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer of Michigan, a Democrat. He complained during last year's campaign that he needed more Secret Service protection, then took office and stripped government security for people he disliked, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, General Mark Milley, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and former National Secretary Advisor John Bolton. Just last month, Mr. Trump rescinded extended Secret Service protection for former Vice President Kamala Harris. But with so much menace in the air, even Mr. Trump at times in recent days tried to make a distinction between violence and retribution of another kind, with some of his supporters anxious for revenge after Mr. Kirk's death. Mr. Trump offered a caveat. Well, he said, you want revenge at the voter box. And that's the end of the article. But I can't stress enough to y'all how we have to set aside these polarizing views and start really seeing each other for who we are, which are humans, people, that live in the same country. We live on the same planet. We inhabit the same space. I mean, we have our own homes and, we do our own things. But at the end of the day, we live on this planet. And in order for us to actually maintain, this world, this country in a way that's habitable, in my opinion, we have to find ways to unify. I mean, it's obvious that this regime is, or this administration is not on that page by any means. But if we're going to, in any way, shape, or form, maintain some sense of democracy in this country, we have to start really pulling away from these polarized mentalities. And if we don't, well, we will just watch the demise and the destruction and crumbling of America as we know it. I will share this article in the show notes. Y'all take care of yourselves. There's so much going on. There's so much division. There's so much uh, evil that's out there right now. And folks are counting on us to pick a side, right? And fuel that fire, whichever side that is, right? But I encourage you to just be an observer and see what's going on and figure out how you can create a better world, how you can work on yourself as well. Work on yourself to be a better person. Do things that are going to bring you joy, that will heal you from whatever issues that you have going on with you. Because the more that we work on ourselves and make ourselves better and try to make our surroundings and our environments better, the hope is that that would be a ripple effect for the rest of our communities, our cities, towns, country, state, whatever, right? Because what's happening right now, it is not sustainable. This is a season of chaos and craziness, but we have to find ways to, get out of this mentality. It's not worth it, y'all. It's not worth it. So I implore you to do the opposite. Find the joy, find ways to heal yourself and heal others in your life, or help, guide them to that because the healing has to start with them. But if anything, work on yourself. That's half the battle. All right, y'all. We will get through this some way, somehow. But like I said, I encourage you, work on yourself first, and the rest will fall into place. I love y'all. And like I say sometimes, let's just keep on keeping on. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Eating Podcast. And I'll see y'all next week. All right. Bye.